Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Malcolm. I cover the education and training sector at UKTI in Singapore. And today, I'm very pleased to have Julie from the Eliesha Training Company Private Limited, who is based in the UK, to co-share this presentation slot with me. Eliesha Training has done a lot of good work in Singapore in terms of business successes, and I will ask her to share a bit of her experience later in the presentation. But for now, I'll just give a quick overview about Singapore's economy and also some sharings and some important insights about the education and training sector in terms of policy developments and also what's the latest out there in Singapore. So for a start, Singapore is UK's largest trading partner in Southeast Asia. About approximately half of UK investment into ASEAN is Singapore-bound. At the same time, UK is Singapore's fifth largest foreign investor. 3/4 of Singapore's investment into the EU is UK-bound. This essentially ties in with UKTI's aim to position the UK as one of Europe's largest foreign direct investment countries, from which most of ASEAN's investment should be inward-bound. There are about 1,000 companies and about 30,000 British residents in Singapore. Why Singapore? For a good many number of years, Singapore has always positioned itself as the gateway to Southeast Asia. At the moment, we have about more than 7,000 multinational companies, of which 60% actually locate their regional and global headquarters functions in Singapore. Examples are such as Unilever, as well as Pearson, Procter & Gamble, BT, and the likes of all. These are important because Singapore is basically an active trading open economy. At the same time, there is an urgent need to identify good local small and medium enterprises who essentially contribute half of GDP and also employ 70% of the local workforce. English is a language of business and education. Currently, the education policy in Singapore is generally such that all young students are encouraged to study both English and also a second language, for example, Chinese, Malay, or Tamil. Moving on, in terms of UK and Singapore bilateral relationship, the UK-Singapore Economic and Business Partnership was signed in 2011. This essentially formed the cornerstone of between UK and Singapore in terms of how we would like to position UK as the preferred trading partner in the EU at least, for Singapore. This led on to how the EU-Singapore FTA negotiations were initiated in September 2013 and was ratified recently. Currently, some of the key sectors of focus under the Economic and Business Partnership include education, aerospace, information communication technology, as well as the health sciences. I will talk more about that in terms of education slightly later. But going back, Singapore is the only country in Asia that maintains a AAA credit rating. It also has very attractive low tax incentives for attracting multinationals across the world, and that of course includes UK companies to relocate to Singapore, to set up in Singapore, and more importantly, to contribute bilaterally to Singapore's economy and also to the UK's economy. A brief information about economic structure. Singapore's economy is expected to have grown by 2.8% in 2014. Which is slightly coming in on the lower end of the economic forecast. GDP forecast for 2015 this year remains slightly a bit uncertain. That's about hovering between 2% to 4%. Inflation is likely to be around 0.5 to 1.5%, and I think the latest figures that I got from just 1-2 days ago is that Singapore is headed for some bit of a deflation actually. So this actually has consequences and of course resultant outcomes for what this entails for Singapore's economy in the year 2015. But suffice to say that generally Singapore's economy has very much centered upon manufacturing and construction and also the financial and the business services as core sectors, as core engines of growth. Moving ahead, I think what we are seeing is that the Singapore government would very much like to put a lot of emphasis on, for example, the services sector, developing even further in terms of digital media, for example, biopharmaceuticals, transport and storage, logistics, info communications, and more importantly, in terms of education, we are talking about education and training in terms of educational technology, professional training and development, preschool education, of which there is more to come in the slides below. A bit on the government procurement structure for those of you who are interested to find out more. We have what we call in the Singapore government, there is what we call GBIS. On the third point, that GBIS accessible to all suppliers. Essentially, non-classified procurement, about 3,000 Sing dollars, that's worked out to about 1,500 pounds. They are published on the government's web portal. So these are basically open to competition and also inviting all foreign companies, and of course that includes the UK companies as well, to bid for tenders such as these. But generally, I would say that for many of our sectors, we find that there's usually a better chance of winning tenders if you are already working with a local delivery partner. That usually says a lot about how local, as in homegrown companies in Singapore, how far they have come towards achieving and also improving their systems as well, good enough to be on the international and regional stage. For that, I think later on when Julie will share a bit more about experience in working with the Singapore companies, I'll leave her to share more details with you. But for now, in terms of a little bit about IP protection, intellectual property, Singapore is also positioning itself as an IP hub. And I think for many years, it has also been a signatory to major IP conventions and treaties. In the UK and Singapore, UK we have the UK Intellectual Property Office, which has also signed a memorandum of understanding with Singapore's Intellectual Property Office of Singapore, that's IPOS. So there's a very healthy and growing relationship between the UK government and the Singapore government in terms of developing a good IP framework. And what does this mean for you? For example, if you are an educational supplier, if you're an educational technology company based in the UK, this says a lot about how you could actually, through Singapore's context as well, you could actually establish a foothold in Singapore. Key opportunities for UK companies. Now, I'll just very briefly touch through some of the major sectors, but later I'll focus a bit more on the education part, which is actually the key point of this presentation. Aerospace, aviation hub, that's really about Singapore's position as the regional MRO hub, essentially. We have the likes of Rolls-Royce setting up in Singapore, having a base there. And essentially, this means a lot also for training and development. Biomedical sciences and healthcare, Singapore's aim, again, is to look at higher value, higher end kind of, a more upstream kind of technologies. For example, healthcare technology, what are we looking at? And also in terms of infrastructure, we're also looking at a lot of infrastructure in terms of Singapore General Hospitals building. I think there are at least a couple of good hospitals in terms of community care hospitals, palliative care hospitals, health sciences development. These are all upcoming projects as well. Creative industries and ICT. This talks about Singapore's aim to position itself as smart, not just a smart city. I think the buzzword now is really about what we call smart nation. So for that, I think UKTI, we have colleagues again working, covering the ICT sector. We're working very closely to tap on UK's expertise in terms of how we can work together bilaterally to position Singapore as really at least a smart nation for the rest of Asia. Energy, financial and professional services as well. Singapore is globally known as one of the wealth management hubs, at least in Asia Pacific. Energy, demand for energy is expected to increase by over 30% in the next decade. Infrastructure development, as I mentioned, there are quite a lot of what we call railway infrastructure opportunities, and for that, my UKTI colleague covering rails and the transport sector has had a lot of business wins recently from UK companies, and we see that as a very good success of how UKTI is positioned to help UK companies in this particular sector to win business in Singapore. This comes to my main bit of the presentation in terms of education and training. This in Singapore's context, this contributes about 3% of GDP and is forecasted to reach about 5% this financial year. Emphasis on knowledge-intensive work, because we are increasingly looking at how can we develop deeper skill sets and capabilities, not just across the professional and the financial services sector, but also more importantly in key sectors such as food and beverage, retail and hospitality as well. The Aspire Committee essentially is a government-led committee set up to revamp the polytechnic and the technical education in Singapore. What the main aim of this study is really to look at how we can future-proof the youth against unemployment via more integrated, enhanced internships as well. For many years, Singapore has had, of course, a lot of internships, and we do send out students to all over the world. But there is an increasing need and urgency to recognize that not everyone may be academically inclined. And more importantly, with the glut of potential university graduates in Singapore, what we are trying to say to everyone and to every young potential student is pursue your own interests. By the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you have a university degree or not. It seems to me that this is the message that's coming from the Singapore authorities. So what this means for our UK universities, our UK education companies out there, is to be able to come forward, and if you have a very good proposition in terms of how we can work with Singapore educational institutions, do come and talk to me later. A bit more on education and training. There's a demand for management education to equip future global leaders with the skills to drive business strategies in Asia. For example, Unilever, they have set up their own leadership, the only leadership training center outside of the UK, or in fact outside the EU, being that they want to position Singapore as an APAC hub for the leadership training solutions. So at the same time, I think we recognize that there are a lot of global MNCs out there who have, of course, relocated their RHQ and their global headquarters there. So there is an opportunity for UK providers to be able to work more closely with our Singaporean counterparts to help develop some of these professional training solutions. Skills Future Council, this is a very recent development. The Skills Future Council is a government initiative set up to develop integrated system of education, training, and career progression for Singaporeans, to promote support for individuals, and more importantly, to foster the concept and the idea of lifelong learning. Now, lifelong learning, of course, is not new to any nation, but what the Singaporeans here are trying to do is that they recognize that there is because the economic structure is poised, that there will always be so many evolving changes and all that, and we are all affected by the global economic changes. What the Singaporeans here are trying to do is to predict in the next 5 to 10 years, in the next short term to mid term, what can be done to help the Singaporeans to upskill, to relearn new skills as well. And therefore, that's the main purpose of Skills Future Council, is really to work with a lot of the current Singaporean educational institutions, and hopefully more foreign training partnerships as well could be forged. So at the same time, we are looking at some of the aspects such as preschool education. We are looking at, the other point is continuous professional development. There's professional training. We talk about leadership training as well. We talk about educational technology, because the schools themselves, by and large, there is still a demand for very good innovative products in terms of educational technology. And that's why I think we do have a couple of Singaporean companies out here at that show. And at the same time, we also have the Infocom Development Authority of Singapore. They have been here over the last 2 days to look at potential UK companies as well. As I mentioned, the second last point about the revamp of early childhood education, physical education curriculum, there is currently a demand for very good preschool teachers, not just that, preschool innovative curriculum solutions that you could look at. If, for example, if you have some very good technologies that is targeted at the preschool level, the nursery, the early years, I think this is a good chance for you to talk to some of our local preschools as well. Emerging technologies, this goes back to my point about educational technology, supporting teaching, learning, creative inquiry, collaborative environments, mobile applications, learning analytics, e-assessment. Now, related to this, there's also currently a big focus on big data, data analytics, cybersecurity, as well as workforce training and development. So these are some of the key areas that the Singaporeans are currently looking at. So if you have any expertise or in terms of professional sort of proposals that you would like to put forward, do come by and have a chat with me later. 5 key takeaways before I hand the time over to Julie. So Singapore, in short, we offer a low-risk, high-potential economic environment, gateway to Southeast Asia. Number 1 in World Bank's Doing Business report, in the ease of doing business. Number 2 also in the World Economic Forum's competitiveness report year on year. As I mentioned, gateway into Asia, Singapore exports at least 25% of goods into ASEAN, 70% to Asia. Of course, there's a legacy issue and a very close historical, cultural, business, and legal ties with Britain. Economic restructuring, just a sort of recap the whole point about, as Singapore moves into what we call a restructuring drive to move up the value chain and to improve, more importantly, its productivity. This means that any sector that actually offers solution to help in this transition will do very well. Financial services has always been one of the fastest growing sector in Singapore and will continue to grow very quickly. But what we are also looking at are also other engines of growth such as healthcare, education, training, infrastructure development. And so Overall, all of these sectors, there are areas where the UK has some expertise. So we see a good match between what Singapore currently demands and what UK companies can potentially offer. So with that, I'll hand the time over to Julie. She will share more about her experience in doing business. And over to you, Julie. Yeah, thank you.
Well, my focus today is to share my experience of two things. Firstly, working with UKTI here and in Singapore, and secondly, of taking a new innovatory product in the field of leadership and management and associated products and services into an international market. These experiences, of course, are in the context of what the Asian marketplace, and particularly Singapore, had to recommend it as an international market for our products. And also, of course, I'm going to look at the issues and the challenges that we faced in actually tackling that market. In essence, I'm going to talk about three key ingredients. The first one is product. In this case, in Eliesha's case, it's our pearls of wisdom. And what's absolutely crucial if you're going to tackle a new market like this is that you've got the right product. You need the right product. You need to deliver it to the right market at the right time. You also need passion. And by passion, what I mean here is you have to have a real belief that your product can help deliver what that local marketplace actually requires. You also need the drive and the energy to create an international market. It does absorb an awful lot of your time. And partnership, absolutely crucial. Particularly powerful partnerships with the UKTI, with new potential clients, and with new distributors, because this is what's going to ensure success for you in terms of your own export strategies. Just to be able to put this into context for you, I thought it was probably quite important to understand what product I'm actually talking about. In our case, we embarked on export in the middle of last year. Just May 2014, I did my first overseas visit. It came about because the product won an innovation award, and our local UKTI advisor made contact and asked if I'd ever considered exporting our products and services on a global basis. My reply was, no. Maybe we thought about it, but certainly we hadn't looked at it seriously, but that I was very, very open to exploring it with him. And that's really how the journey began. And to put that into context now, I'm just going to take a few minutes to show you a short video that actually explains what our 200 pearls of wisdom actually are. And you'll probably understand when I go on to talk to you about the impact of that in the Singapore marketplace, what its relevance was.
Eliesha is distilling years of experience and insight into short video learning clips, like the one you're watching. Eliesha's Pearls of Wisdom. This video looks at the rationale behind this approach. In this information-rich age, learners have become information foragers, adapting built-in foraging mechanisms that evolved to help our animal ancestors find food. Informivores looking to get maximum benefit for minimum effort are constantly making decisions on what kind of information to look for, whether to search around this current site, try another search, click another link, or stop the search. To gain the attention of informivores, the general trend has been to put convenience ahead of substance, but Eliesha is taking a different approach. Pearls of Wisdom are designed to ensure that each one has value to the listener, is short enough to hold the interest, and yet engaging enough to create real learning. So why the short video format? Here at Eliesha, we know what we're talking about, and we know that talking alone is not enough. The adage is that a picture paints 1,000 words. Well, let's illustrate that with the picture superiority effect. Research shows that if you just hear something, in 3 days' time you'll have about 10% retention. Add a picture in, and in 3 days your attention will be nearer 65%, 6 times better. Visuals provide a peg to hang language on, which aids memory and recall. Eliesha Pearls of Wisdom are designed so that the visuals you see support the audio you hear, rather than distract from it. Images illustrate the points being made. Models are built in front of your eyes, and key points or phrases appear for you to read along, or pause the clip to write them down. Why are Pearls of Wisdom only 3 to 5 minutes? 3 words. Choose to use. The best learning comes when the learner themselves choose to use the learning material. We know that learners are going to choose to use videos that are appealing, engaging, and succinct. From experience, Eliesha knows that frequent change of activity prevents boredom and sustains interest. And we know how to communicate real value in just a few minutes. Some of the Pearls of Wisdom cover a lot of ground in this short time, and that's by design. You might get what you need straight from one view of the video, in which case you've had a concept delivered straight to your brain efficiently and effectively. But with Pearls of Wisdom, you're in complete control of how you view them and use them. You can pause to take notes and skip back and forward to review as much as you need. And with the Pearls of Wisdom being available on a range of devices, from PC and laptop to tablet and smartphone, they're on call, ready for when you choose to use them. For an organization, video is an incredibly powerful tool in education. It slots right into the behavior and customs of contemporary learners and removes the 3 biggest barriers to training: cost, time, and geography. Designed to appeal to the range of learning styles, Eliesha's Pearls of Wisdom are each relevant, engaging, multi-sensory blasts of learning. Together they represent an invaluable, flexible learning resource that provides the learning you want and will choose to use.
Effectively, what we did is we took those pearls to markets who were driving their leadership and management capability and capacity. It gave people masses of choice. It enabled them to do things and to do training when they only had very short amounts of time to actually deliver it. It played into markets who had a drive and an enthusiasm to build up the capacity of their local pools of talent. And as a result, Singapore, that are absolutely looking to retain the economic growth that they've achieved over the last decade, they were really looking to skill up all of their local talent pool and ensure that they could actually play a major part in driving their economy forward. Now, export is not easy pickings. And in the Chinese proverb that you'll see on the slide in front of you, pearls don't actually lie on the seashore, and if you want one, you have to dive for it. This takes resource, time, money, and marketing collateral, just like your UK market does. But it often has additional costs associated with distance and also requires you to take cultural, legal, language, awareness, and a much more flexible and adaptable approach. It needs, above all, commitment, passion, enthusiasm, a love of people, and probably a sense of adventure to take your products from the UK market through into the Asian marketplace. Finally, in those 3 key things, partnership. This was critical for Eliesha, particularly with the UK trade and investment. We needed to provide early diagnosis and assessment of the markets and the best locations to explore. And UK trade and investment helped us to do that. Getting to know your country reps, your local UKTI advisors within the UKTI offices and British embassies, and building up a real understanding and partnerships with them makes a very, very significant difference. What UKTI provided for us was the fuel to get our journey started. They helped Eliesha to navigate potentially dangerous waters and avoid the hidden rocks, preventing us from getting shipwrecked on our first voyage and saving us precious time and money. And in the calm waters that followed, they helped us with a cocktail of support. Financial subsidies, overseas visits, market research and export training. And they helped to facilitate the setup of relevant meetings. Generally, they helped to make the business happen for us. And above all else, I think perhaps what did make the difference for us, and the difference between failure and success, was the knowledge that they were able to provide and the preliminary research they were able to support us with. For me, UKTI support and country embassy support helped us to punch above our weight. So I'd recommend that you invest time in getting to know UKTI in your region and in the local embassies, and take time to explain your products and services and what you are trying to achieve. 3 top tips. Carry out thorough market research before you decide to visit. Then get out there and explore the reality. Secondly, be patient and ensure that you have the structure back at base to enable you to invest time in this new activity. Thirdly, make friends with your UKTI trade advisor at home and abroad. That hopefully gives you a bit more of a feel for why we took this particular product and why we actually work so hard with UKTI. Malcolm has covered in great detail what the benefits are of working in Singapore. And we found things like the common language, the fact that it was so close to the major Asia-Pacific economies and UK's largest trading partner, where there is over 600 million people in Asia, larger than the EU. All of these issues were critical to us. The strengths that they have in terms of IPR protection, highly skilled and educated local population. They have a very low corruption and a very strong rule of law, good infrastructure and transport connectivity, and it's a very, very good base to develop into the wider Asian economic region. Challenges that Eliesha had to face: there is an 8-hour time difference between here and Singapore. There's a 13 to 40-hour flight to get there, and it can be an expensive place to do business. But the benefits and the strengths that we encountered far outweighed these challenges. So in summary, pearls or product, we felt we had the right product at the right time, and we believed that Asia offered us a significant opportunities. Singapore itself was aiming to sustain its economic growth through higher skills and innovation, and we believed our products could contribute to achieving this goal. We had a passion to explore export. We were in a position to dedicate the time and resources, and we were curious and enthusiastic. Finally, with UK support, we were excited about developing new partnerships with our UKTI partners internationally. And finally, with the timing of the release of our new product range and Singapore's market requirements, we felt driven to launch ourselves on this new adventure. And in the words of Jackie Kennedy, pearls are always appropriate. Thank you.